1 shooting across on sax, and then boom, and 3 this way.
It was one epiphany that I had while working in public access early on and working with teens is my love for teaching. Teaching people how to edit videos, how to, write storyboards, and how to shoot in the TV studio. One day it clicked, and I realized that it was gelling so well because of this was something that was a part of, like, in my DNA, is to teach.
And then 3 will probably, once we get the light set, swing around to shoot. 3 and 2 will be shooting like, probably, actually, I'm sorry, 2 I might do on him, and then have 3 in the boom, like around this way, going this way.
What drew me into public access was the first day I entered People TV, which was the public access TV station in Atlanta. And I came in and was just totally like swept away. And it was really about seeing other Black people in a space, in a community media center, making content and working collaboratively. So that's what drew me into particularly public access television, which I continue to study to this day. There's a part of it that, the general public doesn't take seriously, I feel, but then there's this other part which, I've been directly involved in that is serious, meaning that there are people who are engaged because they want to do something that, can improve their community. And whether that's having a dance show, whether that's talking about health and wellness, or whether it's about, talking about gun violence, in the community. These are all things that people, they come in and they want to build together.
What you doing? Making a mess, man. Yo. Yeah. Yeah, I see it. Yeah, it's cool. We just need to readjust that on top of, swing that over.
Telling Our Stories Community Media Portrait Project came out of pretty much a hallway conversation that I had with our photographer, Kyle Cassidy here. And he had asked me about my dissertation research, and I told him that I was doing interviews with producers at PhillyCam, and he said, well, can I take portraits of the people? I said, why, yes, that's an excellent idea. In fact, I was kind of thinking about that. This is something that I feel that's not really focused on in research, is the story of the storytellers. And so this is a multimodal way of getting at the experiences, the motivations, the aspirations, and that live all within the people who produce content through, our public access, and local radio resource at PhillyCam. PhillyCam is Philadelphia Community Access Media, and it is a nonprofit that operates the public access TV channels for the city. It also has a low-power FM radio station. And this is the kickoff of collecting stories of community media makers. To date, we have over 40 portraits that Kyle has taken at 3 different events at PhillyCam. And we have somewhere around 10 plus interviews. So my work this summer has been working with the community advisory group and research assistants to start collecting more audio stories so that we can develop a podcast series that is in tandem with the actual, the portraits that you see.
And I also know that you're a single parent.
I am.
Yeah.
Yep.
Tell me what it was like, being a single parent and then also being a producer and then an administrator.
Well, it comes with its challenges. I think that more than anything, I always approached parenthood as being a mentor for my daughter. She's now 26 years old. She also fell in love with media work. She's a photographer, and it allows us to work together as a team. So often we share ideas and concepts and to support each other's efforts.
What kind of colors do you use a color to complement?
So it's a great, absolutely. Yeah. It's a gradient purple.
Okay.
to ping.
What I think is overlooked are the transformations that occur inside community media centers. The relationships that are developed as people are making programs together, the ways that people are feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment when they get something done. That's the important part that gets overlooked at times because attention is placed on like the actual programming and what the messages are being said. And that's important, but it's also important to focus on what's inside.
Hello and welcome. I'm Johnny Knutson. This is our first interlude into the Free Speech Week, and I'm a founding member of the Atlanta Public Access Producers Association. And from the video that you just saw, we're going to be holding a conversation with Antoine Haywood. He's a gentleman who studies how communities of color use geographically defined communication infrastructures to facilitate civic participation in democratic communication, collective learning, as well as community care, how you take care of your community and whatnot. I'm also going to be joined, hopefully, by a public access producer, comrade, Mr. Richard Bowden. We hope for him to join us soon. Just like to say welcome, Antoine. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Thanks for showing that video, man.
Man, that was a great piece.
Y'all got me on that one. I didn't expect that. It was a pleasant surprise. I know it's out there, but it's really something. I was getting choked up because of, of course, the People TV part. And like, so here we are, talking to, my ATL peeps, man, reconnecting. We've always been connected, but connecting here in this space in this way, virtually, and in this week, man, that's something very special. So thank you for that.
Oh man, I'm excited to have another conversation. I really do appreciate you here recently came and helped us out and kind of spoke with the city about what's going on here in Atlanta with our public access interests. And today's conversation is about the relevance. Even today, still a lot of people are moving online and whatnot. But I believe, and from the piece, as we looked and heard, there seems to still be quite a relevance for public access media. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it really just cut to the chase. The core of, argument in my dissertation is you understand that relevance clearly, very clearly, when you see and understand how communities of color use the resource and how they benefit it and do all the things that you say, build equity, expand their social networks, and get into enterprising, improving themselves, taking care of their community. You can see all of that. There's examples out there. The thing is, we have to start collecting more of the examples and uplifting those stories so people can see like, this is how this thing has value in this age of, like you said, well, all of the social media stuff with misinformation, disinformation going around, surveillance. I mean, all of these things, and then people with the hate speech, and then the lack of news and information access. I mean, there's so many ills that is attached with the advancement of technology, right? As it is, anytime we make a significant transition into new technology,
AI.
But yeah, AI. There's that too, right? But all of these and streaming platforms, which I definitely want to make sure that we discuss the implications of streaming video, right? Today, but it's there are things that even though as technologies advance, there are consistent things that community access media has done for over the past 50 years. That you shouldn't forget.
I would say that the local connections are the most important part of it.
You got it.
Because those are the people that you see in your neighborhood, and you sources that you probably trust.
Yep.
One of the big things that I see going on in the government part of it is that there seems to be quite a shrinking in community input in how you're able to speak with your elected officials, council and mayor and what have you. Often you go to a say a utility committee meeting, and you get to speak for maybe 2 minutes at the front of the meeting. There's no interaction during the meeting on maybe relevant subjects. So I think it's very important to have that the P side of the PEG, and let's identify that. When we talk about PEG access, we're talking about public, educational, and government access over the cable infrastructure primarily. And again, the reason that I say that the local connections are so important is because normally those people who are subscribing to that particular cable source are all citizens. They're all constituents, if you will. And the public side gives them that opportunity, in my opinion. I mean, I think it bears out to have their own voice. They don't have to wait for government to allow them to speak on particular subjects and to collaborate as a community on the directions that they think things should go, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's an opportunity for when you have a community access media center that does have that like public engagement piece to it. You can continue to have these conversations, these critical conversations that are needed about, say, what's happening down at City Hall, and people can build on that. And I think, one thing too that I like stress in my research is there's the conversations that happen on TV, right? That you have, and that message goes out. But there's also, we can't forget about what happened. You and I know, because we've been in the halls and we've had experience of being in a community media center, is the interactions that happen when they behind the scenes. So people build, and I've seen this like all throughout my, my 20-year career as a practitioner, of just how people make connections and how people build, just because, I mean, they coming into the studio and they have a good conversation in the space, but that spills over out into the studio lobby and on out into the neighborhood, down onto the block and back again, right? So so that's important. The other thing too I want to just point out real quick is about the point that you made is being able to monitor government as well. And that's what the other thing that's very important, that as we are losing, as newsrooms are shrinking, and they're losing reporters who are not on the beats of watching City Hall about what they're doing, or any of the other people who have power in our communities. There's a huge gap, right? There's a big gap. And so we need more than ever resources, whether it's the channels, it's the funding, it's the people who are getting trained to go down there to also to be able to have this tracking government, because the PEG infrastructure is a part of like it's a record of what happens at those meetings, down there, and the school board and down at the city hall. Yep.
Same thing. Well, before we get too deep into the conversation, we did see the video that kind of gave us a little peek into your background, but maybe you can give us a little bit of your history in public access, starting it. I would even like to know how you got into it.
Yeah, Allison Fussell. I got to shout out Allison Fussell, who, I met at the Atlanta History Center, and I was a museum fellow over there. This was right after I graduated from Morehouse. I was trying to figure out like how I was going to build my career, like which direction I was going to go in. Working at the History Center gave me a foundation for it gave me the foray into understanding the nonprofit game. But then when I met Allison, she pulled me over. She said, "We're doing this thing with youth. We developing a youth channel over at People TV." And I'm like, what? Like, people, what? Like, what is this? Public access? And then, who? And there's young people. And just as you saw in the video, when I came down, like, it was something about it when I entered into the space, and I'm sure you can identify being in this space where it was, especially back then, early 2000s, it was like, boom, it clicked. It was immediate. It was like, this is the place to be. People are building here. This is on the grasses where the rubber hits the road. Young people are coming in here making TV programs, and we're doing PSAs and stuff. You got older people. I met yourself, Richard Bowden. I met Hadari. On down the line, Jay. All of these people. And then, as I said in the video, and it was like, it's a whole community of Black people doing all of this work. What I'm saying? Most definitely. And so I was, that's how I got it started. I went from volunteer back in 2002, so that was over 20 years ago, at People TV, on up to the when I left, I was the director of community development. So, then I was overseeing the relationships that we had with community organizations, as well as overseeing the youth program.
That's a
Mhm.
big
Yeah.
title, that I think we kind of slipped over pretty
Hmm.
quickly. Community development. Tell us a
Community
little bit
development.
about that and the importance of that in a community media space.
You gotta have it, because as I tell people, community media starts with community, right? It's like we gotta lead with there, and I think you can get tripped up if you start with the like actual technical or the television part. And it really, one thing that I learned, and I give all full credit for, like when I was cutting my teeth at People TV, was I understand that and I was working alongside Hadari Tyler, Thomas, who created the position that I was in, that full-time position, for the record. um just that what it meant to have that power, and to build power in this medium with community, with our community, and to lead with that. And it was kind of like, at that point, it's like, this isn't just about, because I came in like, yo, I'm gonna make TV, I'm gonna make some money, and I'm gonna and nothing wrong with
Nothing
building
wrong.
a career. You want to do that, we got to eat, and
Well, that has been a
but
passion.
it's the community part, though.
Yeah.
That's what kept me, is seeing like, oh, okay, this plays a role in helping uplift the messages of other organizations, whether grassroots nonprofits or just grassroots coalitions of people who can't afford to get access to the airwaves, right? It helps lift them up, and so when we're playing a role in that, so as you say, like, that's an important part where we cannot rush over. We can't overlook that, and that's the more intentional role of, because public access has gotten critiqued for a long time of just being this space where people just willy-nilly and say whatever they want to, right?
Right.
And so there's that
The
conversation,
free
but
speech
then
part. Yeah.
the free speech part, right? And then you have, though, the intentional part, where it's like, we are going to help this. Here's a group of mothers who are they want to do a documentary on somebody who got murdered in their family, and they can't find out the case, they can't find out who did it, and they have stories that they want to collect, but they need help telling their story about their organization, the mission, and maybe hope that they can get some leads to bring justice to whoever killed this person in the community. So that right there, like, that is where you see, and it's like, that's helping build in the community, and that's something that, like, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution doesn't do.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
let's be clear. Or nor the Philadelphia Inquirer
Right.
doesn't do. Like, I don't
Right.
want to name the place where I'm from, or I'm from West Palm Beach. The Palm Beach Post doesn't do that, right?
Right.
So that is the power of community media, because we have that free speech, we have that ability. We can do things like that,
And it's
right?
the direct connections. I mean,
Mhm.
the two-way connections from, I mean, calling into live shows and those types of things. I mean, we talked about the shrinking, journalism, local journalism, and who's watching, what's going on, at City Hall.
Mhm.
We definitely have to have those community connections. The NPUs here in Atlanta. Something that was actually written into the city charter and whatnot.
Mhm.
Even that is beginning to get whittled away and what have you. So, the relevance, I mean, we're talking about what's going on in, even though it's far away in Israel, there still have local impacts and whatnot,
Yeah.
with the religious communities, both, Islam and Israeli here
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
America. So I think that we definitely have to not gloss over that community involvement, that community engagement, and community impact that a community development head like yourself has. Even we're talking about the relevance. What are some examples even today? Maybe like in Maui with the the flash fires and whatnot. Are there any examples you can lend us that people can look to and say, hey, here's what community media is doing in this community and on a subject that they may have seen something about in the national news?
Yeah. I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's an excellent example. That is really recent. is so out in Maui. The station is called Akuku Maui. It's the community media center out there, and they actually had a record of what their community, what the community that was ravaged by the fire. They were the one organization that still has like a visual record of what in like I'm talking about the video of what that community looks like.
Looked like, right. And
right,
so,
and they were the only.
their archives weren't burned in the fire.
No.
Hopefully, they were digital.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Their archives were preserved, and it turns out that like they have one of the only archives out there of that community that's in like that in that shape, and so that has given them an immediate value. Then on top of that, they so at the beginning of the pandemic, they started doing something called the Maui Daily. They're doing a daily program that was, they don't really call it news, but it's like it's more of informational updates. You get some input from there's short pieces from people out on different parts of the island reporting in on what's happening in their neighborhood. Because I mean out there, like what is their news affiliate? So if they're getting anything, they're getting it's satellite. It's being piped in. You're getting national news or something that's maybe from the West Coast, from Cali or whatever. And you may get something, from the Big Island.
It really occurred to me that they I mean, I'm sure they probably have local, affiliates and whatnot, but you're right.
I mean, on the Big Island they do. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you're right. Most of the mainland, information is probably what's getting piped in, like you're saying. So
some place like Maui though, which is a whole huge community unto itself, that has some suburban and rural parts. So how are people even telling stories and getting information that's like immediately like relevant to what they need, right?
Right.
Akuku is the resource for that. And then when the fires, the other thing that was that happened in that instance, that crisis, is that of course you get all of the majors, they swoop in, they get the breaking news. You see they pan, they get you all the shots, they get you the stand-ups, blah blah blah. And the station, and then 30 minutes, and then they out.
Yeah. And so who's left to actually, continue to tell the stories? Yeah. So I mean, that's perfect example. And here in Atlanta, I mean, well, just not here in Atlanta, but all over the country, community media, public access is in a challenging space. What would you like to say about where we are? I guess even nationwide, we only still have a few stations that are really, I think, being impactful, like we just spoke about. Here in Atlanta, we're in the dark.
Yeah. Unfortunate. And then there's other, there's places like Tucson, which is since it's no longer what it used to be in public access. Things have, areas like out in Southern California, like in LA once had a thriving center. That doesn't exist. Down in Florida where I'm from, not like Tampa is like the only one really. So it is you have, when you really look at even the Southeast, it's very sparse, very sparse in terms of access, and that's something that I'm concerned about. I hope that we can do some more better work on building that up.
Is there a reason behind it? I mean, it seemed like this being such an impactful or potentially impactful resource, why would you say is that? And I guess it's mostly governments that are deciding that it's no longer relevant.
One thing that you have is the emergence of the streaming technology, which we're not getting money from, to support local communication infrastructure. So that's one thing. Cable subscriptions are like steady declining, right? And that was their main revenue source that was for places like People TV, and still is for Philly Cam. On out to what is it in open Denver, not Denver Open Media, but out
really,
in Portland.
I mean, can we really blame it on the decline?
No. Hear me out. Okay, I'm not done. Hear me out. I'm pointing out that that's a reality, right? Gotcha. And so, but the other thing too that's important to get to what you're saying with the local government is, and this is where it does get layered, local governments are losing their authority to regulate this. And this has started way back in the early 2000s. So statewide franchising, which hit Georgia and 22 other states, right? Where basically you had the cable companies that went from negotiate and the local authorities having ability to negotiate to get money from cable companies they go to the state level and negotiate, and they give the money to the state. And so a lot of times we know like how like that money will never trickle down to a local
Right.
level because it gets caught up in politics. But there's still this continued pressure from the commercial industry sector to roll back and to prevent any kinds of regulation that would gather resources that not only benefits your city, right? So because places like Philadelphia, they're still getting 5% from Verizon and Comcast. So that goes into the city's like coffers to do infrastructure or whatever work. And then there's additional funds that you can negotiate. What used to be for local communication, like community access media, public access, right?
Right.
But if you can't even do that because of there's no federal legislation that enables them to do that anymore. Nothing that comes from the FCC, nothing that comes from Congress. It all goes away. And so even the governments on a local level that may want to lobby for something in favor of a People TV or Philly Cam, they can't. They don't have that much power. But then you get into the complications of the cities where you have people who don't really believe in it, right? And the people who don't want to actually fund this, right?
Right.
So when we start to talk about the politics of the thing, there's
Layers.
many layers, and I'm very, very reluctant to point fingers at one single thing. You know what I'm saying? Because there's all these, as I've learned from doing research over the past 5 years to really get my head around a lot of this, is that there's all these layers and there's a lot of factors that are like influencing the reality or the way where it is, where we are right now. Yeah.
So basically, because the people don't have any lobbyists to, we have to advocate for ourselves. I'm looking for some solutions to get in this back because, obviously a lot of places are losing, daily newspapers. The television stations are all commercial, and I mean they're owned by some conglomerate that barely makes them look local. Except for the salacious news that, the shootings, the murders, what have you. So what I'm looking for solutions for regular people who do see the relevance, and want to advocate with their communities. Because from my perspective, you're, having some decline in, subscriptions and whatnot, but the people who are still there, and in Atlanta's case for certain, they still, they were grandfathered in, so they still get their, 5% or whatever it is. And they could, take out 10% or what have you and put that toward, community media or public access. But, that hasn't transpired. In fact, I mean, it's like I said, when I look at it, the subscribers, as I said earlier, are constituents. So it's to me, it's like a secondary tax on the citizens for the right of some cable, operation to do business in their right of way. And who really pays for that? Is it the citizens paying for it, or is it the company paying for it?
No, it doesn't. I mean, the company, they'll tell you that they're paying for it, but they're taking
Because they had to lay their infrastructure.
Yeah, and it's like, oh well, they've laid the infrastructure, and it's actually been something that they've subsidized, they've invested in so much, and that pretty much the community should be appreciative of, like, the services that they provides for the community and how it keeps people connected, and but I think that it does the coffers, the people who have the hands on the purse strings, they do have to make those decisions about where they're going to make that investment, and the community, like, there has to be a civil conversation about that, and this vision of like, well, what can we achieve that is successful if we make this investment in it, and people, the subscribers who are citizens, the residents, they are paying for this infrastructure. The thing that's always got me over the years is that not everyone fully understands how this works. Not everyone fully understands, like, oh, this little line item, if it's being taken out of your tacked onto your cable bill like it is in Philadelphia, it used to be that way in Atlanta. But if that 21 cents or whatever it is, people don't understand like what that connect, like what that they just see that as like, oh, that's just the extra charge or fee. And how many people we've heard like your cousin or your whoever, complaining like, man, look at all these fees. I
Right,
mean, and
right,
even the companies, they play off of that, like, oh, well, we're not going to tack on all these fees. Meanwhile, I mean, yes, they do have like, these like mysterious fees that they tack on, right? Or they
right,
funnel things through. But I always had a problem with the fact that, like, an important resource such as community media, it gets lumped into all of these fees, that things are like, well, y'all are taking all this stuff, and it's like, this is nothing. People aren't taking away. This is for the community, and this
right,
isn't just another like fee. This isn't just another, and that's kind of even where I have like a problem with. I mean, tax. I mean, we can get into that's another discussion, but it's like, this is something that is an investment, and people don't. And it's never been articulated in that way. It's never been presented that way. It's never been promoted that way. And the way that, I mean, when it's been successful and it has worked, is people in communities have formed coalitions where they were able to translate and break it down and say, listen, this is what we're fighting for. And if, as you all are paying for this stuff, this is what you are contributing to for us to have this. And so if we can have this, then this is going to help. You can tell your story. We can come together. We can help these organizations communicate. We can connect our neighborhoods, the MPU, whatever it is. Like, we can contribute to whatever these local communication needs are.
right.
We got to figure those out, right? But it can be done. So, and I saw there was a question about, where examples of where this is working and where there's getting like the government support and thriving. Um, I do, Hawaii is an exceptional case, because the way that local is so deep in their culture, in localism, I should say, right? Localism is a part, and it is a cherished part of that culture out there, and so it doesn't take much explanation, to really make a case for the value of the local communication. And then considering, like, that, yeah, they don't have, getting that, what is even the value of getting the information from the mainland. There's some, but
Right,
being out on the island, you really kind of need to know what's going on on the
right,
island,
right. Exactly.
so but then you also go to more urban places like New York City, where every borough has a really because there's a lot of cable subscribers. Like,
Right.
the boroughs have, from Queens Public Television to Brooklyn free speech at Brick Arts. I also would say what's the name is really on the come up. BronxNet is really
Mm,
looking nice these days, right? And MNN is one of the oldest ones in the game.
right.
Boston Neighborhood Network. So in the urban areas, and then in some of the suburban areas, especially like Massachusetts, every town in Massachusetts has a peg channel operation because
Mm,
they value local. And
right.
people, I've learned, they get to go down to the actual like government proceedings and like have a voice and say in how much money gets allocated to peg access. Like, the people in the neighborhood, that's a unique situation.
Mm,
And so, yeah, I think the places where it has been successful is because of it's ingrained in a part that the place values localism, and it
right.
sees this communication infrastructure as a part of that, as a very important part. That's an essential part of that. Yeah.
Right. Right. Um, it seems like the big education that we have to do is, the local part
Yeah.
is community development part, and a big learning curve for communities to know what this is. In your research, what have you found that are ways that communities can advocate more for public access and its and its maintenance and
Oh,
relevance?
yeah. I mean, I think the one thing that like makes a huge difference in this is even it's proof in what happened in Philadelphia. It's just the coalition building that I've learned over time, and I learned that just I mean, not only just through research, but I've learned that as a practitioner. Like when I so building up a coalition of people who they're not just it's more than just people who like to make a television show, more
Right.
than people who like to make media, like it's more than media makers might be might be the thing that brings people together or communicating, right? In localism, like so there has to be these shared values and it has to be a principle led movement, you know, and that brings together people from the youth sector, from workforce development. It brings together people from health and human services. It brings to people from the arts sector, right? So when you start to do that and you build it, then people say, oh, wow, this isn't just about folks who want to make a little TV show, right?
Right.
It's bigger than that, you know?
Right.
So, but yeah, you have to put in, there has to be the work to do that building and to people to coming together, say like for folks who aren't necessarily interested in making media to understand how it's relevant to them. And then once they get into it, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, we need you, right? You know, but like you said, it's community development. And one thing that I've learned in practice is community development is slow work, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's like, you know, when you make a pot of gumbo, right? Where it's like that thing gets good the longer you let it sit,
Oh, you
right?
let it through. You stew. Yeah.
Let it stew. So
Yeah.
it's a slow cook, you know. So you got to bring those things to you know, bring all the things together like you do in a gumbo, and you got to let it stew. But I do think that there's more. There are more immediate things too. Is being present in spaces that are adjacent to the work of like access, like what community media does. So, and I say that meaning like being in spaces where people may be talking about digital inclusion or digital equity building,
Mhm.
right? Being in spaces where people are talking about like, oh, well, how do we improve our access to local news and information? You know, being in those spaces,
Mhm.
and then you know, or maybe even where people are talking about, you know, you all have a lot of like media arts and filmmaking that exploded in
Here in
Atlanta,
Atlanta, right?
where
Yeah.
people are talking about educating around the craft of like storytelling, right? You know, so what are those things where it's like, oh, local communication, storytelling, right? Community care. I use that one a lot. Those are bigger, that's beyond just television, you know. And I think when you use terminology like that to build relationships, you know, people have a different mindset and they start thinking about, oh, okay, we talk about things in that way over in this circle too. So
Right.
maybe y'all are a part of this, right? Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Television is just the medium to help communicate. You know,
Yeah,
all
just like just like
ideas.
chat
Yeah.
like whatever the technology is,
Yeah.
that's the technology. Like
Right.
AI, like right. So or so it's just like that's just the medium. Social media, it's like that's the platform, you know.
Right.
So but what do you do with that? You know, is the whole other thing, right? Yep, yep.
Now, getting back to the free speech part of this thing, um, I think that a lot of people, that is what they want to do. They want to make their television show, or they want to make a point about something that's going on down at City Hall, like Cop City, for instance, and what have you.
Mhm.
So, would you say that community media is definitely something that's still relevant for that?
Yeah, I'm curious. That's a big question I think about. You know, like what is the value of providing a free speech platform today when on television, whereas there was now that you got competition
Right.
basically. So
No more five
back
minute
in
rules.
yeah. Well, back in the day, back in the 80s, back in the 90s, before the advent of, all of the social media of Twitter and Facebook, in your mobile phone and everything, it's the public access television was the one place where you could go and you could exercise that free speech, right? And so, but my biggest question is, it's like, well, what is the value of that now that people can just easily go and reach a global audience on your phone? You know what
Mhm.
I'm saying? So I don't have any concrete
Well, and then we're
answers,
talking
but that's
global
something I
versus
think about.
local, though.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, you do have local access too. You got everybody from there in between, you know. The thing is, it's like, well, how does what I have learned from my research, and let me say this, and this is talking from to over, I've been interviewed over 30 producers here at Philly Cam and African American producers. And the one thing that is really clear that people made is it and I'll just say this in the parlance of our time, it hits different when you put it on television, right? It is people take it seriously. It's a people receive the information and they respond to it in a different way.
Right.
And a lot of people are telling me what was really fascinating. They're like, oh yeah, anybody can get on Twitter and say whatever they want.
Right, yeah.
Anybody can get on YouTube and do whatever. Anybody can get on TikTok and do whatever, you know. And it has its place, it has its usefulness for certain things, but it's still, you know, what there was a study that just came out and said, you know, the majority, there's over 50% of people that are still getting their local news and information from television news, from broadcast news.
Right.
So you can't tell me that TV is dead.
Right.
You know, you get anything. I don't subscribe to that.
And I think I really like the way that they said that when it hits television, it hits different. When it's on television, it hits different. So people, I think it's more a believability factor or whatever. And again, the local versus global. You know, talking about all of these community impacts, the free speech part, community archiving and documentation. I think you mentioned in terms of Maui. What are some of the other impacts that we can, I guess, as advocates, you know, in terms of the Atlanta Public Access Producers Association, lean into in terms of, you know, exhibiting the relevance?
Oh, okay. I would just also say just the skills development, the community, the connections that people make in this space. This is really what gets into the core of my dissertation research. You know, the confidence that people build as they're able to like lean on one another as they go through, like making media is not easy.
If you don't mind, give us a little peek into you know your dissertation. I'm loving this, you know, because this is again, this is what the conversation is about: the relevance of this medium, you know, in the digital age.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my dissertation is focused on it explores the cultural significance of African American community participation in public access television in Philadelphia. Okay. And you know, just the real nitty gritty of it is that, you know, you really understand the value and utility of this in the digital age when you look at how African American communities engage in the space. You know, and so the messages that are produced, there's cross-platform communications that folks are using. So I'll give you one show that's called We Talk Weekly. This was a perfect example of this, you know. And We Talk Weekly it's a combination. I think some of them are millennials and some of them are like Gen X, right? But they are on all kinds of platforms. The show started off as a television program, then moved over to radio, which is at Philly Cam has a low power FM radio station that is broadcast and it streams, but they put cameras in the studio. So they use what we're using right now. They use StreamYard when they go on their program on the air. They got their stuff all on social. They promote it on social. They got their website. It's on the local cable channels on Philly Cam on Comcast and Verizon, right? And you know, it's streaming through on TuneIn so I mean they're
pushing it out to all of those platforms simultaneously.
All that stuff. But the key thing is they met mostly the core of that unit formed by taking classes at Philly Cam. Right? So that connection, that's the thing I'm talking about. And I call that like resonance, right? In my thing, where it's like people come from, there was so many orientations that was my job as the community, the membership and outreach director at Philly Cam. I did orientation like Jay Foster did. Okay. At People TV, right? He's like,
a blast from the past, man.
Man, come on. Yeah. So I did orientations at Philly Cam, and there was so many times where people came in and like, man, I ain't seen you since the 3rd grade. I remember you used to live on the block or whatever. You want to do a sports program too? Word. I was doing a thing because my son playing the league. Let's do that. Bam. And it does hit different when it happens in this space because people are, first of all, they're face to face, they're by each other, you know, and they're chopping it up and they're talking to each other in real time. Of course, this is all I'm referencing to it before the pandemic, before things shut down and everything, right? And you know, but it does hit a lot different than people. Yes, people make connections on YouTube, but it's a whole. What I experienced, and this is what I'm talking about in my dissertation and unpacking. Talk about it when people come together in the space. and they started exchanging ideas. And you sitting in a room with 30, 40 something people, and especially, and most of the time it was people of color. That's the other thing that I picked up. I was like, it's people of color in here every month, new group. And people have, every time they would go around and introduce themselves, themes would pop up, right? In terms of what people want to do. And and I made sure that I had everybody go around. It took time, but I was like, we're going to do this because there's a reason why, because of the purpose. Because when y'all gonna pick up on this too. Once you start going around, you're going to hear somebody else talking about the same thing that you want to do across the room. And right there, that's
your collaborators are.
There's your collaborators.
Right.
And a lot of people come to Philly Camp. What I found is because they were looking for collaborators. They told me, and this is something else that's coming up in my research. You talk to folks and they say, yeah, I could sit at home and I could watch the YouTube video. I could learn this on my own. I got all my gear and everything. He's like, but I need a community to work with.
Right. Well, I always say television is a team sport.
It totally is. It totally is, and even radio. So I go back to saying We Talk Weekly, using them as an example. They are a team. Right. And they are a very powerful, impressive unit. As I think there's 5 of them, and they're able when one is not, Charles ain't able to be there. Lauren could probably be there to hold it down. They can switch out people, talented. They can have somebody out in the community doing stuff. And then if you're gonna really do something where you are like pushing that information out, you have a brand, and you are like building the connections to the community. You need a team to do that stuff. You can only do so much as yourself as a producer. And I think that's one of the I think is something that people may be misled about influencers. And people may want to like, oh, I want to be a TikTok or Instagram influencer, and people can do that, but still, the chances of you going and really making money out of that is slim. But if you really want to build something, and that something is even just like, that's for a short minute, then you got to hop onto something else. But if you're really trying to build something on the local level and make a difference, you need a team, and you need a grassroots team to like that understands the nuances of the community to make it actually to do what it does. Yeah.
So we're saying that community media is part and parcel of community building.
Yeah, totally.
And then you're talking about the localism, people being in the space together, like I said, before the pandemic, and hopefully we're kind of starting to get back to some of that. But, people also learn tolerance, different communities connecting with one another and learning about each other. And maybe the Muslim down the street isn't, as bad as you suspected. Maybe he's, just a regular guy like, yourself or what have you.
Yeah. No, there are many times where I saw those connections being made. And I think that's something so going back to the original, like the values and the philosophies of public access that was connected to, it's connected to free speech, is that if we had this space where there wasn't government intervention, there's not commercial intervention, you have that when I say true, that's a little bit, but you have that type of public sphere, right? Where there's no government or commercial messing, and the community can do what it needs to do to solve its problems in a way that it sees fit, right? And that requires people to negotiate those differences and develop some type of tolerance and to have some civility. I said that word earlier, so it's like how to do that. And that's not an easy thing to accomplish. And as you can see, it's like civility is a very hard thing to accomplish on Twitter, right? It's failing at that,
most definitely.
It's failing at that. But when you work in a space with somebody,
so many things
you don't have to agree with them
when you're just reading what someone typed. You know what I mean? If you're we're kind of looking back and forth one another through the cameras and whatnot, but when you're face to face, there's a lot of other parts of the communication sphere that's being picked up on.
Yeah.
And that also, I think, translates, through television as well. I don't know how long we've been on, and I know there's probably some things that I haven't touched on that you maybe wanted to make mention of.
Oh, okay. I did see there was a question I want to make sure I flagged that was about I got the project that I was working on in the in the video, which was so that what you saw there was we were at Philly Camp. And so I prior to graduate school, I worked at Philly Cam for 8 years as the membership and outreach director, and I'm no longer a full-time staff member. So like I transitioned out of that position back in 2018, but I'm still a producer, right? So as well as, Philly Cam is my research site, and but I am there directing programs. So you saw me, that was in the action a moment. We were producing a show. It was a spoken word piece by a poet named Warren Longmire here in Philadelphia. It is called Bird Diz. So we were in the studio prepping for Bird Diz. We had musicians coming in, we had projection, and we had and then all the people that you saw on working on the cameras, like those people. Some of those people came through the classes that I taught, at the beginning of Philly Cam. People who I signed up as members, we all built together though.
Right.
And so it's I look towards the relationship that we had. I call back, on those people. The other project that I want to mention real quick that I was referenced in that video is a community portrait project that is actually I'm in the throes of getting ready for that. Is this week, and the exhibition is going to launch at Philly Cam on Community Media Day, which is October 20th. So, and Community Media Day always coincides with Free Speech Week, and because of the legacy. But that project, what we did, Kyle Cassidy, who was a photographer at the Annenberg School, I teamed up with him and worked with and worked with some an advisory group of Philly Cam members. And one of the things we got at is, Kyle created these beautiful portraits of the producers, and along with the producers, I did interviews. And so we have audio clips that you can listen to that. So that while you look at the portrait, you can hear the person tell their story about why they do what they do. And man, I tell you, I'm so moved by seeing it all come together. Like, it's just been a vision. But when I walked into the space, we installed the first part of it on Monday. And these are like, I think they're 27 by 36, like the really big portraits.
They're at Philly Cam.
They're at Philly Cam on the walls.
All right.
And so, which the walls used to be, they had just
basically an art installation.
It's an art installation.
Yeah.
So you walk in and you see these beautiful portraits of people who make media at this, in this space.
All right.
And they're talking. They talk about. So the walls start to talk basically.
All right.
That's what's really got me with this. And it's like they talk, and even though that person is not physically, they're not there in the flesh, but their likeness is there. And it's coming through the walls, and you're hearing them talk about why they do what they do. And I think, and for me, that's been also, it's very important. And I referenced this in a video, that we just don't hear enough of the story of the storytellers.
Right.
That gets missed. Policymakers don't hear that. The foundation people, the funders don't hear that. Like, they really need to understand what this means. Why you, Johnny Nutson, have you been involved in this for how long? You beat me. You've been you were there when I got to Atlanta. So you 20 plus whatever years, Adrian Haddad, they all go
Dallas.
back.
I started out in Dallas in community media.
Yeah. So, but why did you start? What got you involved? What was your moment? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like that story.
Project. It's called People of People TV, and it's something that I started quite a while ago. So I have some old clips. You probably remember Jack Jershowitz, and there's a lot of people that I've talked to over the time, and I really, like the fact that, you're doing something, along with your dissertation that, continues to, I admire Philly Cam because it really reminds me of what I experienced when I first came to Atlanta and got in the space here. And I know that's, due to, the involvement and the impact that you've had there in the community. And, like I said, in this art installation, it sounds great. Another way to bring people into the space and continue to create community. And you said that your dissertation is coming up in May of next year.
Yeah. So I'm planning to defend in May. So we will. I'm feeling good about it. I just got to turn to like just writing, But the nice thing is, my dissertation is, it's autoethnographic, meaning that it includes my story, so I'm talking, my story about how I started and why I got started at People TV, all of that is in there, what connects me that keeps me connected all the way up to Philly Cam. And then it's also like, it's multimodal, meaning that it's not just text. I'm going to have the audio and the portraits that we're doing for this project that's in my dissertation as well. Because the point is that, like, writing, writing can be effective, right? But there's some things that, like, when you see a moving image, when you hear the person, instead of me just quoting what Zarina Lomax said about how her program has made a difference in her life as a gun violence victim, hearing that from Zarina and seeing Zarina talk, like, that is more powerful than Antoine,
Right.
quoting that.
Right.
And
Well, I
trying
mean,
to, like, describe that.
this is the digital age. So, I mean, a dissertation on community media without some moving media, I mean,
Right? Like, right? Like,
it
right?
makes perfect sense,
Like,
man.
right. Thank you.
I look forward to calling you Dr. Antoine Haywood.
Yeah.
I mean, brother, I tell you, I'm so proud of you. I wish we had never lost you here in Atlanta. I don't think we'd be in the straits that we are now. And I think that, your work is going to be impactful and helpful to us getting things back on track here. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to talk with you. And again, thank you for coming down and trying to help us out with the city when they were doing their we can't really call them work sessions, but I guess maybe they were calling them listening sessions.
Right.
Don't seem like they listen very well to you, brother. But I do appreciate it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, folks have to. There was another question that had popped up. I saw, like, real quick, but it was about just who could we talk to? Who could folks talk to, write to? And I think it has to happen on the local level. I think I've talked to some people and they think that, oh, well, this is something that the FCC can make sure that it happens. This is something that it is helpful to, yes, express this to the FCC, express this to your state reps, in Congress and Senate, that is helpful.
I think the latter is probably.
But you got to go to the local, right? You
Yeah,
got to go to the people who were at that meeting we were at, from representing the communications department for the city. Those are the people who need to hear that. Your city council members who are voting on how those funds get allocated, those are the people who need to hear that, right?
And on a consistent basis.
On a consistent basis, not just when people need money. That's the other thing that I've learned from other leaders in this field, is that they stay at city council. They stay down there. They and what do you think the lobbyists do? So
that's what lobbying is.
We don't have the money. It's like people have to commit that time. We have to get together like a church and work rotations. You know what I'm saying? To do something, sign up and go down there, and people make sure that it happens on a consistent basis. Because the Comcast, the Verizons, the Charters, they all have the lobbyists that are able to just camp out. They get paid to be down there. That's what they do. They get paid to be out there. They get paid to take the aides out, to eat or to whatever, So we have to do what we can with our resources to make sure that we are present too.
One more question on that government side. Now, here in Atlanta, we used to have what's called a telecommunications department who kind of dealt with all of the franchise agreements, and they actually had, I guess, lawyers that kind of knew telecommunication law and were able to help the city when it was time to negotiate, with Comcast or whomever the cable operator is. I know we've kind of changed since House Bill 227 and whatnot, but there's still, there's still an actual negotiation process, and then I think there's still some important asks that could be brought forward in those negotiations. Do you think that is another thing that communities should be asking for, that they have a department that's educated on how to deal with these, telecommunications companies?
Yeah. I that's a good point. It's a very good point. People got into, let me just pause and say, because I'm going back in history, but then I'm also like thinking about how this is happening now with digital equity, with broadband, right? So you have a lot of funding that is coming down the pike. It started coming down from this broadband investment, and this is the second wave. We had BTOP back on Obama, right? There was broadband investment that was pretty much build out, but now there's a lot of money, a whole other chunk of money that has come through that is for digital inclusion. And you have people who are coming into the game where on the state level, they are forming exactly what you're talking about. They are forming these departments and agencies of people who, some people have expertise and some people don't, you know, in terms of how to allocate these resources and how to continue to make sure, you know, to get access to
And I
the
think
funds.
that's a really big deal that you mentioned, that, you know, the funds, the franchise fees were going toward paying for the television side, but now that a lot of people are streaming and whatnot, I mean, it's still the same infrastructure, basically. I mean, you know,
It sure
the cable
is.
television is coming, you know, through the, you know, the same, you know, coaxial or fiber or whatever the infrastructure is, depending
It's
on
running over. It's running over public property. You
right.
know.
It's
So
still the same right away.
yeah, it's running over public property.
Why is it there? Evidently, and I can't recall it, but there's obviously some federal, you know, distinction between the streaming, the internet side, and the television side that has kept them from, I guess, having some franchise fees or on the internet side.
Yeah. Well, you can't because of, you know, cable is classified as video infrastructure, and broadband fiber is classified as information infrastructure. So it's information. It's an information service versus it's not a video service, right? But
Right.
those lines, as you just articulated, that is becoming blurred. They're overlapping because of video services now being provided through broadband. Right. And what I actually just heard through I attend, so the ACM, the Alliance for Community Media, you can go to allcommunitymedia.org. That's the national organization that represents PEG channels throughout the country. They have a monthly policy call. And the last call is one point that was raised is that the line is starting to blur, and there's actually a way people are starting to make some headway in conversations. And I say headway with legislators who are starting to understand and ask the question that you're asking. They're saying, wait a minute. So, you know, okay, 10 years ago, clearly, you know, like y'all video wasn't really on the internet, was text and some images, so on and so forth. We in a whole different, thanks to streaming, we in a whole different era now.
Right. Okay.
So it's like, wait a minute, y'all are doing video. Wait a minute, let's how are we defining things? So people need to make sure, you know, that's a leverage point, a conversation point that people need to pay attention to. I also want to point out too, there's something in the House. This is very important. It's called HR. It's a bill called HR 3557. I'm looking at my notes to remember I got it right. And this is a threat to local franchises. And when I talked about at the top of the show, at the top of the program, I talked about how like local authority is being whittled away.
Right.
This is a clear example. People can go research and look it up. HR 3557. Buried in that bill is this it's deregulatory, is a deregulatory move to that so that they can't.
This has been a fabulous conversation. I think that we're under a minute now. What I'd like to do is get a commitment from you to give us some of those links that we can put into this program for the people who did join us, where they can begin to educate themselves.
Yeah, I'll give you a whole list of links. That's not a problem.
Excellent. Hey, Antoine, I really appreciate you taking this time with us, you know, for Free Speech Week, and talk about this important, you know, conversation on community media. And, you know, great speed and good luck with your dissertation. I know I'm going to be able to call you Dr. Haywood real soon, brother.
All right, I appreciate it. It's an honor. So I'm glad I'm able to stay connected with y'all and, you know, do what I can, you know, share whatever it is that I know, and, you know, because that's what this is about, you know.
Yes, sir. And we'll definitely continue to look for you as a resource.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. Adrian, I'm not sure where we are. How much time do we have? Maybe a few seconds? Just a few seconds? Okay. Well, in the time that we have, we've been speaking with Antoine Haywood. He's a doctoral candidate, and his study, his dissertation is on how community media has been impactful for African American communities. I probably butchered that a little bit, but we're definitely going to keep in touch with him. And on this conversation, the Atlanta Public Access Producers Association here in Atlanta is an advocate for community media. Here, People TV channel 24 is what we've been working to keep alive. As I mentioned earlier in the program, we're in the dark right now, so we definitely need our community to come together, to get back together, to do a lot of the things that Antoine talked about, the community development, the community building. Again, I'd like to thank you for joining me. I'm Johnny Knutson, founding member of the ATL Papa. In the studio, we got Adrian Coleman Tyler, my comrade in arms, and we'd like to thank you for joining us, and we look forward. Check with us tomorrow. I'm not sure exactly the time that we're going to start, but tomorrow we're going to be having another conversation about the People to People TV program that I've been working on. So we'd like to thank you for joining us, and we'll send out a message about what time that program will be on tomorrow evening.
I'm on live on Turner Channel 24. I'm on my TV show. Bye.
The English Avenue community is located on the northwest side of downtown Atlanta. The street boundaries are Joseph E. Boone, Joseph E. Lowry, Donald Lee Hallowell to the north, and Northside Drive.
English Avenue was a community in celebration. Right now, you see English Avenue as a community in transition. But the projection I have for the future is English Avenue as a resurgence. We are coming up.
Hello, this is the Heavenly Connection, reminding you to be sure to make your manufacturer mandated tune-ups daily. We would remind you that you are a manufactured creature.
Okay, listen up. Sit down, speak, sit down. Come on. Hold right there.
As we attempt to celebrate the life
elected
of Joe,
officials listen less to the mayor and more to their own voices. So, in a lot of ways.